One of the biggest pieces of evidence that I've been aware of about Epstein's case is that he had the hyoid bone fracture in his neck, right? And that's one of the bones where I could be wrong, but I think they did I read one time there was a study across all the hangings across they took a bunch of hanging victims, and that hyoid bone was only broken in like a small subset of those hangings.
Yeah.
And I guess there has to be a ton of trauma for the specific bone to break.
Yeah.
And in his neck, it was broken.
Yeah, it was. And it's not just his hyoid bone. He's got two fractures of his cartilage in his larynx, which if you find your Adam's apple, it's like right in its bilateral. So you've got a fracture. And again, using this term, they're both in the vertical plane. Mm-hmm. So you've got one here. You got one here, and then the hyoid's an interesting bone. It's the only bone in the human body that does not articulate with another bone. Just let that sink in for a second. It's
stationary?
Yeah, in soft tissue, its sole purpose, actually, it anchors our tongue in the back of our throat. It holds it in place, and it's bird.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of bird-like in shape, and it's got two greater horns and two lesser horns. And some people describe it as a bird-like structure. Some people say that it's got the appearance of a horseshoe. I've heard that. But it's kind of crescent-shaped, okay? So it's anchoring the tongue back here. Let me just run down the list.
Yeah.
One of the problems is that with hyoid, one of the reasons you don't see it commonly fractured in hangings is that it's so high up in the neck.
Right.
I mean, it is superior just about to everything else right here. I borrowed this cord real quick.
Of course.
If it's not anchored in something. Disconnect
it can
right
pull
here.
out, yeah.
Sorry. So let's just think about for a second classic hanging, okay? So classic hanging, you have to be most of the time suspended or partially suspended. So if you think about a noose, it's better if you use your hand. Think about a noose that runs up like this, okay? Now it goes up generally behind your ears, okay? And it comes to an apex back here. And that's what, in our parlance, it's what we refer to as a tenting feature. It's T-E-N-T-I-N-G. So you get this apex at the top right here. It travels upward, comes to an apex right here, and all your body weight essentially is being supported by this location right here, okay? Suspended. Now, you can have a partial suspension, okay? The medical examiner in New York, OCME, referred to it as a soft hanging, which to me implies that you're not suspended like classic. You can sit, and yes, people hang themselves by sitting. Aside from gunshot wounds relative to hanging, in my little slice of the pie was the most frequent mode because everybody owns a ligature. Not everybody owns a gun. Everybody owns a ligature. You can make them, I've seen them made out of
like a
bed
rope
sheets,
or something.
Rope, belt. Belt is very common. So with that said, how do you get the hyoid fractured so high, and particularly so that you have to have enough velocity to drop and get this thing to fracture? Now, one of the things that she said was that he, due to his age, that she believes that his hyoid had ossified to the point where it was fragile. Okay, I'll go down that road with you, but how are you going to explain these fractures here in kind of the soft, more malleable cartilage? And it's running, Danny, it's running bilateral. They're running north and south, vertical plane right here, and they're on the either side. It takes that kind of pressure in order to do that, or maybe a readjustment. Also, the ligature mark that he has on his neck does not go up and down.
It's horizontal.
Running parallel to the shoulders
Wow.
like this. You don't have this thing that's going up behind his ears like you normally see. I got to tell you, when I'm just looking at the images, and anybody can see these images.
These are just public images that you found.
Yeah, you know where they come from? The 60-minute special that was ran back in, 19 or whenever it was. They did.
Yeah.
And you could have knocked me over with a feather because you got to see all of these images and the interior of the cell.
Mm-hmm.
They're out there. Just check them out for yourself. Don't believe a damn thing I say. All
right.
Just go look at them. So if you're trying to sell me on the idea that, first off, he has hung himself and you're absent the tenting feature, what did he do? Did he lay down flat on the floor and the ligature went around his neck? And it looks like the ligature has been readjusted because you've got this kind of deep, it's an abraded furrow. Yeah, there you go right there. This abraded furrow that's
Again,
running.
Steve, don't put this on the podcast.
That's running parallel, as you can well see. Do you see how one mark is low? Right there, it's really dark.
Yep, it looks like it was adjusted.
Another one, and then you've got another one that is superior that comes to like a little point right there. This thing's been moved in some way, and it's more dependent on his right side as opposed to the left side.
Yep. And there's
That's
another
kind of
mark up there by his jaw.
Yeah, I'll give you another one, and this is available out there. Do you know he's got a deep tissue bruise right here in his trap?
Really?
Yeah, it's right here. You can see it. It's out there on the images too. Because I got to tell you, I don't know. What did he do? Bump into a wall backwards? I don't know
Right.
how you get this manifestation. Yeah, that's it right there. I don't know how you get that manifestation right there because it doesn't correlate with what you're seeing on the front. I have, you mentioned the study about the fractured hyoids.
Yep. Why does he have facial hair in the second one? Not the first one.
No, that's the back of his head.
Oh, that's the back of his head.
Yeah, that's like descending down the back right there. I've had one fractured hyoid that was not related to manual strangulation. You know what it was? A guy went over a 3-story off-ramp in New Orleans, 3-story, 2-story, doesn't matter, but in like a 1968 Pontiac that had the gigantic steering wheel, like Mamaw drives, like this.
He clotheslined himself on it?
Non-belted. He nosedived into the ground, and the 12 o'clock position of the steering wheel hit him right here, and it fractured his hyoid. It doesn't mean that it does happen, okay? Again, it's just my little slice of the world. But again, how do you account for this injury here? It's almost like there were two modalities being utilized here, or methodology rather. A ligature and possibly either throttling. This is throttling.
Yeah.
Okay. You can do it either anteriorly, okay, or you can do it posteriorly. This is C-clamping, where you do this like this.
Yeah.
So do you have some kind of fight that's going on with, I don't know, himself? I have no idea. How do you get these manifestations injury-wise
Right.
in the neck? Bodden was present. Dr. Michael Bodden was present for the autopsy. He is
explain who he is.
Retained by Mark. I think it's Mark. Hope that's right.
Mark
Epstein, who is
the brother.
This guy's brother. So he was physically there, and his conclusions varied from hers. You can say, well, yeah, Mark's got a dog in the fight.
Sure.
I don't think it's a matter of him looking for money or anything like that. He thinks his brother was a victim of homicide. That's the reason he retained Dr. Bodden. You just don't go off the street and say, hey, want to go to an autopsy, Dr. Bodden? He's been retained, okay? So he's working for Mark, or he's Mark's eyes and ears at a very high end. He's worked multiple over the course of his career. He was the chief medical examiner for the state of New York. I think he was either the deputy or chief medical examiner for the city of New York for a time. He consults on cases all over the country. I don't agree with everything all of the conclusions he's reached in his life. The Michael Brown case in particular comes to mind. but he is respected. And he was physically there to watch this autopsy being performed, this examination.
So he just watched it.
Yeah, it's not like he's participating.
Right.
And I've been present for autopsies like that where you have an interested third party that will be there, and most of the time there'll be some chatter, but most of the time they're merely observing. It's not like he went in and actually did the dissection of the neck, okay, where you're taking out the organs of the neck, as they're referred to. That's going to be part of OCME's team that does that, and they'll retain them. I hope they've retained them. I hope they've retained the larynx. I hope they've retained the hyoid bone. Hope that didn't go with his body, to be cremated, which it has been, and then placed in there's a cemetery here in Florida where his remains are.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And they're in a vase, stuffed into one of these places. Stuffed, that's not accurate, but it's placed in there and it's unmarked. So, I hope that those essential elements were retained so that, I don't know, if it comes up again, somebody else, another person can take a look at it. But you kind of lose... we were talking about a little while ago how, you don't have a sense for what happened, 5 years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
That's the way things work out in forensics. Many times you have to go back and review years and years and years from now. And I don't know what other kind of conclusions he'll draw. I haven't personally seen the autopsy photographs at all. I think that would be quite interesting, to see. Who try to understand?
Are they? I'm sure they're still somewhere where you can get. If you wanted to get access to them, could you?
I don't know. I don't know how the laws are set up with state of New York. I don't know if you can file a FOIA request and actually get those or not.
What other elements of this murder do you find most interesting? Other than the
ligature they're trying to sell me on.
The ligature.
Yeah, that piece of cloth. Which the corrections officer claimed that he claimed, not Morgan.
The corrections
claimed
officer.
That he cut it away. Well, the ligatures that you see, like this one
go
right here,
to that orange thing. Yeah,
it has no tool marks on it at all. It hasn't been cut. All right, so I don't know, and you can see the base knot right there is tied. It's still intact. I'm assuming that he used some kind of odd slip knot there. I can't manipulate to hold it to try to understand it, but that has not been cut. This guy claims that it had been. Again, where are you going to tie off from in there in order to generate this kind of force, in order to have this level of trauma that was supposed to be inflicted by that thing there? And was it collected? Was it collected and that there was transfer evidence on it that's indicative of in multiple locations? So if it's going circumferentially, going around the neck, or there are multiple points where you're collecting DNA specific to this injury, you look at the area on his neck, and Danny, it's abraded. It's like an abrasion, so it's very deep. Not only just trace elements or touch DNA, I'm talking about did they actually find skin? Did they actually find hair, from facial hair from his neck? Was any of that stuff retained? Did they examine all of that? Inquiring minds want to know. I want to know about this, and try to understand it. And then you got the time element that's involved. When they got to his body, he was cool to the touch. He'd been down for some time. And he's cyanotic. You can see they've actually got photos of him being wheeled in, if memory serves me correctly. And he's got kind of the eggplant head, which you see with people that are in a cyanotic state, where they're turning purple, like this. So something has happened that's compromised his airway. Could it be? Yeah, sure, it could be. But if I were a betting man,
you would say murder.
At this point, I'd say undetermined, perhaps.
Right.
I'd have to know more information. Problem with working anything in a correctional facility is that it's very difficult. I've worked cases in correctional facilities, and it is not the most ideal set of circumstances to be in.
Have you ever seen another hanging like this in a correctional facility, in a prison?
Not like this, no.
Do you know what the most common forms of are in prisons?
If I were betting on it, I'd say probably
The same thing?
yeah,
That's
hanging.
the most common?
Yeah. There's something else here's something else that was fascinating to me about this whole circumstance. We have this. Okay, I think most of us. I love the movie Shawshank. I love that movie. It's like what do they call it, a remote drop. You know, it doesn't matter where it's at in the movie. I'm going to watch Shawshank Redemption. I know that this is a Hollywood depiction, but every prison I've ever gone in or correctional facility I've ever gone in to work a case, there was a certain level of order when you go into the cell. Have you seen the images from inside this guy's cell? It looks like a pigsty.
Right.
There's ripped up material all over the place. He's got a bunk.
Can you find a photo, Steve?
He's got a bunk that's absent a mattress, and there are drugs, prescription meds that are all on the top. You can see the med vials. You know, most of the time if you're on medication in a prison, first off, you're in custodial care of the state, all right? I say state, I mean you're in custodial care of, right there, the one to the left, you can see it. Yep.
Oh, oh my God, look at that. That's crazy. Just a bunch of prescription drugs and stuff on the top bunk, like it's a little pharmacy up there.
Yeah, precisely. And so there would be like a nurse that would come by and they'd give you the little white paper containers that contain your meds. They keep control over your meds. Mm-hmm. They watch you take your medication. You wash them down. This guy's got, and I have yet to be able to determine what all of that stuff is, but there is a slew of it that's up there. The floor is littered with these ripped up bits of cloth.
What's that photo on the top left, Steve? It has 3 photos. Yeah. Zoom in on that one on the left.
What the fuck? Oh, it's a YouTube
thumbnail.
It's a screen capture.
Well, there's another picture of it. Oh, there you go. Zoom in on the one on the left. Wow, look at that. Yeah. It's a mess.
Do you notice what's down the right-hand corner there, Danny?
Is it like a boombox?
I think it's a CPAP machine, and
he's got CPAP machine,
and he's got that in there with an electrical cord. That's an electrical cord. I've had multiple homicides over the course of my career that have been committed with utilizing some type of cord that comes off of a device or like a drop cord, like an extension cord. It creates kind of a more narrow furrow. They're abrasive when you apply them to the skin. How does this guy even have access to all this stuff? And I understand if he's got sleep apnea, he has to be on a CPAP machine. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's cool. But that should be integrated into the investigation. Was that thing collected? Did they run down the length of this cord just to look for DNA? Mm-hmm. And yeah, by virtue of the fact that it's in his space, his DNA is going to be on it. But what areas of that cord is his DNA in? Okay. It's not just saying, well, yeah, his DNA was in it. That's intellectually lazy.
Yeah.
So were there particular areas where it was concentrated along the cord,
right.
that sort of thing, just looking at this. And look, again, I've got folks I teach with that are correction specialists, that teach corrections. I've actually talked to them about this. And one of the things that you want in an environment, in a corrections environment, is you want order. Because if you have chaos in that environment, that chaos spills over to other inmates and, the staff and everything else. Who's watching over this guy? Because this thing is squalid. I mean, it's absolutely positively squalid. He has no order in this environment whatsoever. And he's just come off of side watch. Mm-hmm. How does he have access to this stuff? And if he's got these problems, it was
like a day before, I think, that he was taken off watch.
Precisely. And there was some other, it has been alluded to that there was some kind of, Donnybrook with somebody else at some point in time that I've heard people talk about. Well, was his his hyoid fractured prior to this event, and because he was cellies with somebody else, or he had a confrontation with somebody else, is that a survivable thing? I can't answer that question. I think that I would want to know. Was there any focal areas of hemorrhage where this thing had hemorrhaged out, and that there were signs of the bone? You get this kind of modeling that goes on with bone, even kind of in the immediate. If you've got this pre-existing fracture, which I'm highly doubtful of this, where the bone is trying to heal itself, and you can see evidence of that. So how fresh was this? Did it happen as a result of this? Does he have, and again, this stray mark that's on, back here at the base of his neck is an odd finding as well. There's a lot here that doesn't marry up. Timing is a big element here, a lack of accountability. And, if we were, in my field, if we were working this case, we would want to be very, very exacting about who saw him, what was his affect like at that point in time. Was it down, up? Was it flat? How was he behaving? Had he requested any kind of special treatment? Gee, I'm feeling really blue right now, even though I've just come off the side watch. Because even in a case like this, in the medical legal world, we're going to track down the psychiatrist. We're going to have a conversation with him because we want to know everything about this guy. And so far, it's such a damn muddled mess at this point, and has been since the beginning. If you do your job in the beginning and you stay the course and you keep things really, really simple, you're able to kind of cut through all of the static. The problem is this is a monster of their own making, because they failed so miserably. The prison system failed, I think, monumentally. Where he was housed, which I think if he is this valued, why do you have this guy in this particular location? Why has it been moved somewhere else where he can really be watched carefully? I've been on air with guys that practice in, not forensic scientists, with attorneys that practice in New York that would go and visit clients that were housed here. I've had multiple of these people say, we were terrified to go to this place. It was like Thunderdome. Whoa. Yeah. And so you're going to stick him in here? Okay, well, it's your business, but it just, I don't know. It doesn't add up to me.
And the other thing that's very odd is that I believe Bill Barr officially labeled this thing a suicide before the forensic analysis was even done.
He did. Yeah. And I got to tell you,
that normal?
An attorney is probably the last person I'm going to go to for an opinion about manner and cause of death.
Right.
I don't care, what kind of sheepskin they have hanging on their wall. They're not qualified to do that, particularly something that is this delicate. Now, I think that he even stated that he had watched the video. You're talking about the one with the orange blob? Or the minute that is allegedly missing, or all the, you're talking about that video?
Right.
Because, it was implied that, you kind of saw what happened. Well, that's an empirical impossibility. You cannot see what happened in there unless there's some other kind of videography that they have access that we don't have access to.
Right. It's all very odd. Do you think has there ever been another case where a high level murder or like this with like a person of his notability was where it was labeled to be either a homicide or before the medical examination has been done?
Oh, I'm sure that they exist. And
but it's not common.
No, it's not. But anytime you get bureaucrats or politicians involved in anything, in my experience, relative to our field, it's a dangerous mix. You're running your mouth before your brain's in gear at that point in time. And that, that happens. It has happened in local cases. And then, if you come back and say something to the contrary, then you have these little stories that begin to bubble up. Well, there's a conspiracy or, this and that. And again, do your damn job on the front end. You won't have to go back and clean up messes at the end.
Right. Now, why did you decide to do a deep dive on the this Idaho case? With this
It was a number of reasons. First off, I started covering Idaho on national news platforms. I've been on, I think, every single one of them. I'm pretty sure I have been. Every major network, I think, over that period of time. I started covering this thing the day after it happened. I think I was up at probably, matter of fact, there's like a show that Fox does that's a precursor to Fox and Friends. I don't even know if they still do Fox and Friends, but
yeah, I didn't know anything about this case until a couple weeks ago. I started seeing the guy's face on TV, and I guess it happened a long time ago. And
2002, November
2002, and then I knew nothing until Julian told me about it. Shout out Julian Dory introducing us.
God bless him. Yeah, please check him out.
Yeah, he's amazing.
He is a good guy.
He knew everything. When I listened to you guys discuss this, and he knew every single detail. He knew like the kid's freaking first, last, and middle name, every single one of them. He knew what they all had for breakfast that morning. I don't know anything about this case.
From a personal perspective, let me tell you why this case affected me. And I cover a lot of cases, all right, in the news. This case affected me personally, which is not a good idea, because I'm a college professor, and my son at that point in time was a sophomore in college. And the university where I teach in Alabama, Jacksonville State, was it's roughly the same size as their university. It's a rural university. Many first-generation students, those sorts of things. We have that commonality. These are not kids that are striving to get into Harvard. These are kids that are looking to get a degree so they can go out into the world and be a nurse or a teacher, or, they just want to live that solid middle class life, or business degree, and so we had a lot of similarities with that. And when the information began to kind of leach out, if you will, regarding the suspected brutality that had taken place in this house, and no one knew who did it, because Danny, this place is in such an isolated spot that they don't have this kind of thing happen. It's not like it's in downtown Philly, all right? No insult to Philly, but I'm just saying it's not like you've got this huge population of suspects that are out there. You're going to have kind of a very narrow, spectrum here. Who would do this? And, there are all kinds of things that were floating around at that point in time, that it was there was allegedly had been a fight at a fraternity, which this house, the off-campus house, was not too far away from Fraternity Row. Then we heard about stalkers. Then we heard about jealous boyfriends. We heard this litany of who people thought that it could be. But for me, I began to look at this thing, and it broke my heart for these families and, the kids, but the families, because families are left behind. And you send your kid off to college, you don't expect them to be stabbed 50 times, which it turns out one of these victims was.
One of them was stabbed 50?
Yeah, another was stabbed over 30 with disfigurement, blunt force trauma to the face, and sharp force injuries to her face as well. It's hard to comprehend that's going to happen. And in this weird house that they lived in, it's like if you go to any college campus, pretty much you're going to have weirdo housing that surrounds it. You're going to have, these off-campus rental homes that have been lived in by generations of people that have gone to school there, and they do these weird add-ons. This thing was particularly weird because it was built, the original house was built where it was kind of carved into a bank, like a hill.
Right.
And it was originally a 2-story structure. And then they added a third layer. I'd actually been on the air on one program with a gentleman who was the former attorney general for the state of Idaho, as well as former lieutenant governor of Idaho. And dig this, man, he had actually been to this house before because one of his fraternity brothers, he was there for homecoming. One of his fraternity brothers his kid was living in the same house years ago when it was only a 2-story structure. And he was even telling us then, it's like, yeah, it was kind of a weird, but you expect that at a college town because landlords want to try to squeeze as many butts into these places as they can to make a dime.
Exactly.
Nothing wrong with that, brother. And so they added this third floor.
Slumlords.
Yeah. And, I began to think about it from, how did this person know the layout of the structure? Because it's this weird thing where they've got on what would be called the ground level, there's a parking pad where you can park your car. There's a digital pad to gain access to the bottom floor door. Apparently everybody knew the passcode for this thing.
Of course.
Yeah, it's college, man.
Right.
They're not gonna.
Kids are going in and out.
Yeah.
Boyfriends, ex-boyfriends.
Showing up for parties and whatnot. And the second,
Drug dealers.
no comment. But yeah, you're right. Anybody that wanted to come in there, hey, there's going to be a party at so and so. You don't know who's going to be in the house.
Right.
I mean, it could be anybody.
Sure, of course.
Second floor had sliding glass doors, and that was facing the remainder of the hill. You could step off of that second floor through the sliders and walk up the hill behind the house.
It was like woods behind the house or something?
Yeah, it's kind of like a tree line. And if you imagine kind of an amphitheater style, that's the way I've always envisioned it, kind of.
Steve, see if you can find a diagram of the house to give us a cool visual, or like I'm sure there's been like recreations or animations of the whole thing that shows like the house on the hill with all that and the bedroom layout.
You look at this thing, and when I think my first true view of it was an old Zillow view of it, where,
wow.
you're trying to rent the thing. People, they had this view of all of these rooms. I say, geez, man, in the dark of night, somebody's going to negotiate this thing when all the lights are off in the house. When all the lights are off in the house, how do you have that kind of information?
Steve, that's like one floor. See if you can find like a side view of the whole. There we go. That's like a 3D view right there.
Okay.
Well, keep looking. Find some. Yeah. Sorry. Continue.
How are you going to know how to navigate your way through this? Because if you enter on the parking pad, you go up, there's a landing, you kind of switch back and go up, and there's a second floor up there. Then once you get to the second floor, which you've got 2 bedrooms in the bottom, you got 2 bedrooms on the second floor. In addition to that, you've also got like a great room that's a dining area, kitchen. It's like a fireplace, so it's like a gathering area. There's, matter of fact, there's kind of this famous shot where you can look through the window and see the table in the dining area. It's covered with Solo cups.
Beer pong.
Yeah, exactly. You're thinking, well, these kids,
There we go.
Yeah. So when you look at that, you can see the interior of the place. And in addition to that, you appreciate that there's another staircase that goes up internally where you're going to have to negotiate that third floor and try to understand who's up there.
Right.
How are you going to be able to do that without having prior knowledge of this place?
Pause it on the view of the house, Steve, that you were just on. Okay. So it's a maze. For somebody who's not intimately familiar with the house or hasn't been there before, it would be tough.
That hasn't been there before, it would be tough. Yes. Yeah. And what's really kind of chilling about this, and again, this is one thing that really kind of really impacted me. There's this TikTok that these girls that lived here put together, and they're imitating one another. Like it's a comedy kind of thing that they're doing, where they're imitating, how the behavior of their roommates. This one is very stoic. This one is like always anxious. This sort of thing. They're imitating one another, And Danny, the entire time, this thing is like panning around, and everybody had access to this. It's like panning around. You can kind of see the layout of that second floor. And it was so chilling to me in the world that we currently live in. I don't know about you, man, but it's like the place I lived in college. You wouldn't know anything about the interior of my house unless I specifically invited you over. Maybe you were one of my buddies, came over, we drank beer together, hung out. Other than that, it's not going to be broadcast to the entire damn world. And so you have
And they were posting these TikToks before the murder happened.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, what year did this happen again?
2022.
2022, okay.
Yeah. 2022. So you've got this environment, and people have an awareness of the interior of this thing. I think the big question, and maybe one of the things that is going to be, I don't know if it'll ever be answered at this point, but what knowledge, what foreknowledge did he have of this place, this reptile that went in there and did this?
Yeah.
What kind of knowledge did he have of the layout of it? And there's been a lot of talk about this individual had cruised by this house multiple times in the preceding weeks. They pinged his phone at a variety of locations, or found it, that he's kind of circling the area. Did he ever make his way in there? And if he is in a hide above the house, okay, and I dig this, he's in that back area. He's in that brush line. At night, it's like going to a drive-in movie.
Because the house is all lit up and it's
All lit
glass
up.
walls.
Yeah. And so Kaylee and Maddie that are in the top bedroom, it's believed that one of the two of them were his actual target. Most people believe it was Maddie.
Do we have any idea why he would have targeted one of those girls? Again, for people who are familiar with this case,
vegan.
I'm sorry for the dumb questions.
No. He's a vegan, and there's a restaurant in Moscow, which I found out you have to pronounce Moscow, not Moscow. They take exception to that, so you have to think Costco. So Moscow. She worked at the Mad Greek restaurant, and some people believe that he had contact with her there, saw her there. That's just one theory that's been thrown out. There's multitude of other theories, everything from...
He was a vegan.
Yeah, he was, and he makes a big deal out of it. The old adage about how do you know somebody's a vegan? They tell you.
Right.
Yeah. And so they had a vegan menu. The question is, I think one of the big questions is, this lizard was a student in Pullman, Washington, at Washington State University, which by all accounts is only 10 miles away. Mm-hmm. When the hell are you doing in Moscow, Idaho?
Right.
And he is at the beginning of his PhD program. For people that are not familiar with PhD programs, particularly if you're thinking about like something like criminology, which he went there to study, for your first year, you're like an indentured servant, and you have a supervisor. You're assisting with teaching, which he was a TA. You're meeting with an advisor. It's very labor intensive, but yet he's got enough time to go to, and again, it's only 10 miles away. Some people say 8, 10, drive across state lines, and then kind of orbit this one location over and over and over again. What's up with that relative to his behaviors? Because if he is in a PhD program, he's committed to it. How do you have time to do this?
Yeah.
Because the work is so very intense.
This guy had no history of any weird stuff, nothing.
He was a former heroin addict.
Oh.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know if that feeds into it. I know former
me
heroin
too.
addicts that don't go in and commit mass murder. Some of the most gentle people I know had a problem with heroin in the past, and they kicked it.
Yeah.
So that's not, I don't think you can use that to indict him.
Definitely not.
But he sent out questionnaires. He had gone to undergraduate and graduate school at DeSales University in Pennsylvania, which is where he hails from, and he had sent out this questionnaire to violent offenders in prisons. And it was, and I mean really violent offenders, asking them questions about, what did you feel? What did you feel, before you committed this act? What did you feel after you committed this act? Oh, by the way, what did you do to clean up? What did you do to, get any evidence, get rid of any? And that was kind of the nature of this questionnaire. And the thing about it is you can take that and kind of mask it in academic pursuits and push that thing out there like that. And there was great talk about that, that's kind of floated around for some time as well.
Steve, let's go ahead and play this. I want to watch this video from the top and just see is it like play through the whole thing?
Yeah, it's like a diagram.
Okay, play it. Yeah, play it from the beginning real quick. You gotta bring it. Yeah, there you go. All right, go ahead, hit it. Give us some audio.
Is there no audio?
I can't hear anything.
I guess it doesn't have any audio.
You gotta turn it up. Is there volume on the? Oh, there it's up. Okay, there's no audio. Maybe that's for the best. Puppy in one room.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms with people in it. 4:04 a.m. on camera parking. So he just drives his car to the driveway and gets in the house at 4:09. He leaves the house at 4:18. He's only in there for 9 minutes.
9 minutes, dude.
Wow.
Yeah. And he came. There you go.
So okay, so
Through
he
the
walks
slider,
in,
enters on the second floor, goes up the
walks
stair.
right past the first bedroom.
Yeah, goes up the staircase. Landing. Now that bedroom is empty. There's
But
just
there's
a
a dog. Did he didn't mess with the dog?
No, dog stayed in there. And that's Kaylee's dog, by the way. She was visiting. She had already finished up her requirements for school. She was coming back to visit, and that's, if I'm seeing this correctly, that's Dylan, I think, hearing something
On the bottom floor,
Yeah.
directly below them.
Yeah.
4:13,
And-
he goes to the bottom floor room with 2 people. There was a boy and a girl.
Yeah, Xana and Ethan are in this room.
Mm-hmm.
Xana fights like a wildcat. She's grabbed hold of the blade of this K-bar and it's cut all the way down to her tendons. And she is stabbed 50 times, at least, that we know of.
The girl on the bottom floor.
Yeah, well, second floor. Yeah, Xana is.
The second floor.
Her boyfriend has got multiple injuries to his neck. As a matter of fact, the complex, where the subclave artery is, you've got subclavian artery that runs here. There's also the jugular vein that's in here as well. He's injured right here. They don't believe he ever got up out of bed. And there's the infamous image that they had been showing for some time of what appeared to be blood coming out of the house, and it's on the foundation of the house. As a forensics guy, if someone would ask me on air, is that blood? I'd say, I have no idea. They haven't released information. For all I know, it could be rust.
Right.
But as it turns out, it's typed back to him, to Ethan. So he was stabbed in the bed, and he's bleeding so profusely, it's leaching down the wall, and it's actually presenting itself.
Coming out of the wall.
Yeah, it's leaching down the side, so it's on the cinder block. There are tons of these images that you can actually see. This is going to be, for lack of a better term, it's going to be a bloody mess. Dylan, the gold figure that they have in this diagram that's right there, she's the one that saw him. She made the description, now kind of infamous description of him being the guy with the
Bushy eyebrows.
Interestingly enough, when
He's wearing a mask, right?
he's wearing a balaclava, it's
Oh,
one of these
who?
things, a balaclava that you pull over your head. All you can see are the eyes.
Okay.
Hunters wear them.
Like a ski mask.
Yeah, kind of like a ski mask, but it's made out of, it's not neoprene, whatever, like Under Armour.
Like rash guard material.
Yeah, exactly. Here's an interesting thing. that in the victim impact statements.
And she was in the doorway standing there, and he looked at her and just continued to walk right past her.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've got,
Strange.
well, I think that first off, remind me to come back to the eyebrows, but while we're on this topic, just let me tell you what had happened in my humble opinion. This is what in the old days they would refer to as a lust murder. I think that probably he had set his sights on one of the young women up in that top room. He did not expect to find the other one. And he attacked her on the bed. He probably had some kind of fantasy worked out in his mind where he was going to sexually attack her. He didn't count on two women being up there. Not that he's in his right mind, but I don't think anybody in their right mind would go into that environment armed only with a knife, and you've got to go head to head with two people, even if they are smaller than you and they're women.
Right.
He is sexually stimulated before he goes in there, and you don't
How do you know?
Because I think that this is one of the drivers behind what he had done. I think that that's the only logical conclusion that you can reach. A lot of people have stated over the years, not just me, but the fact that, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with this case, but stabbings in particular, when you get multiple stabbings, the knife actually substitutes as a phallus. So as this knife is being driven in over and over and over and over again, there's like some kind of psychological release.
Right.
I think that he was probably sexually stimulated. He went up there. He's got this adrenaline bump that he goes up on. And as he didn't count on the other person. So he's now murdered two people face to face with them with this really robust combat knife made specifically for this purpose. Marine Corps has used it for years and years. As he descends, he is spent. Well, Xana, who was in bed with her boyfriend, Ethan, some believe that she heard Kaylee cry out, "There's somebody in the house." She gets up. She's just taken a food delivery, Jack in the Box food delivery from one of these food delivery services. She's up. She hears something upstairs, comes to the staircase, and walks partially up it. As he's exiting that top bedroom, he sees her. And then he proceeds to chase her back into her bedroom, stabs her over 50 times. I mean, she is just decimated. She's grabbed the blade multiple times. She's tried to parry his thrust, with her arm. She's got slices on her arms.
Good Lord.
Goes over, kills Ethan. Ethan's asleep in bed. We don't know what, I think a lot of people are wondering, because they'd been out partying, they're wondering what his blood alcohol level was.
He must have been killed first, right? Because he would have woken up. Sure.
Either that or inebriation. Don't really know, because they haven't released any of the information. You have to be able to explain it scientifically, though, and that's the two. Yeah. That's kind of the supposition here. Was the question to ask is what did he have on board? He's underage. He's not old enough to drink. So we don't think that he's probably got a long history of drinking. I don't know about you, but, the first time alcohol passes your lips when you're young, you don't have the same tolerance, say, for instance.
He's blacked out.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that for a fact, but maybe. And maybe to the point where he has no awareness that what's going on. But she's struggling in there, man. Xana is. And he's finished that brutality off. As he's exiting, he's gotten another adrenaline bump. It's survival mode at this point. I've got to put as much distance between myself and this house as I possibly can. He steps back out. Dylan gets up by the bed again. She came to the door a couple of times. This is when she meets him eye to eye, and she sees over the balaclava, or within that framework of the balaclava, the bushy eyebrows. Yep. And he did have bushy eyebrows. Keep that term in mind, because I said did have bushy eyebrows. When Kaylee Gonzalez's sister got up, and this is one of the most powerful moments. Her name is Olivia, spelled with an A, Olivia. She asked him, and it's a rhetorical question because she's addressing him directly. She says, when did you start plucking your eyebrow? When did you start pulling your eyebrows out? Because if you see him now, he's kind of very thin. Her thought was that he sat there just plucking his eyebrows out by hand over and over to try to, knock that down in some way. She had insight into him. She really made him squirm as he's sitting in that chair and he's having to listen to all of this. And she just knocked it out of the park. I recommend anybody go and listen to this impact statement she's made. It might be one of the most powerful things I've heard.
Olivia?
Yeah. Olivia Gonzalez, that I have heard in a courtroom. And I've been covering cases, live trials for a long time with Court TV and Law and Crime Network. I've never heard anything
like
like
she's
it.
questioning him in the courtroom?
Well, she's not questioning him. She's direct, and she has planned these things out. I mean, she's got
a statement.
It's a statement. How, victim impact statement. And, because he's rolled over on this. He said that, he pleads guilty to 4 counts, 4 counts of homicide and also an additional count of burglary with the intent to commit homicide, by the way. Yeah. And it was just it took, the whole thing. I think a lot of people really got antsy over this case. First off, that you had a madman running around the countryside here. It couldn't be solved or resolved fast enough. You add the internet into this, the digital world. And so it's really weird with these cases, Danny, that you see there's like a fire that has lit in like the true crime community, or people that are just curious, why haven't you done anything yet? Why haven't you? They catch this guy within 6 weeks. All right. There are a lot of cases out there that are unsolved to this day that may have happened several years back. It couldn't happen fast enough for people. So, I mean, law enforcement really did their job here. Yeah. And then, they tie him back through his through forensic genetic genealogy, through the trash pull that they did at his house there in the Poconos at his parents' house. It came back to his dad. And so, by a process of elimination, it was him. I covered the Chauvin case, Derek Chauvin.
Really?
George Floyd, yeah. And
that was a controversial one.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I covered it on air, did it for 18 days, always on air. I think it was like 4 hours a day for 18 days.
Interesting. What did you come up with on that one?
It was horrible. I hated covering it, and this is just my personal perspective, because the network that I was covering it with at the time, they would bring in essentially attorneys that wanted to fight. I'm kind of the one constant right here. I'm the science guy, kind of talking about trying to explain what they're talking about on the stand from a scientific standpoint, and trying to remain as neutral as I possibly can be, because so many people had an opinion about that case, one way or another.
It was ideological.
Yeah, it was ideological. And that's a weird place to be in from a forensic standpoint, And so I tried to walk that line, to be very, very careful and purposed in what I was saying, so that, if you want to go back and look at it scientifically and understand that, with Floyd's death, it was a perfect storm, I think. You think about the drugs that he had on board, and then you think about the actions that were taken with him, and it wound up bringing about his death, regardless of how you might personally feel about it from a political standpoint or whatever your worldview is. But the most important thing are the scientists that are on the stand, how is this going to impact the jury or the judge in making a decision? Is what they're saying actually, is it feasible? Okay, because both sides have their own group of scientists that they're going to call upon. The defense was at a real disadvantage, I think, because they had very, very little resources to call on relative to medical experts that could address this. It's the only case that I've ever seen, I think, when it comes to the prosecution, when it came to the medical examiner, that one medical examiner did the autopsy, and then the same prosecution offered up, I think it was a total of two other opinions by forensic pathologists, one of which used to work at the same office, that differed from what the actual prosector of record said. That was a real weird kind of thing to observe there, just trying to take it all in and understand that. What would possess the prosecutor to want to bring in, I think, a total of 3 forensic pathologists, and then they've got a guy that deals with cardiorespiratory stuff. This I think it was an Irishman, that had appeared. He was for the prosecution. They threw a lot, in that case for the jury to take a look at and understand. And it was really hard, kind of cutting through, a lot of the minutia that was out there.
Yeah, that's the thing. That what the phenomena that happens over time with things like this is like you remember it when it happens. Like I remember watching the video, right? And then afterwards, after that happens, then you have everyone's opinion online.
Yep.
And then you have time goes by, and people's, when you start reading these opinions, everyone layering their opinion, and this happened now, what was it, 5 years ago, something like that?
Yeah.
6 years ago, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And now it's like you're so far removed from it, and you want to remember something that happened. And it's like, well, I remember watching the video for 10 minutes 5 years ago, and I also have like hours and hours and hours of reading people talking about it and people's opinions of it that have nothing to do with what actually happened.
Right.
You know,
just trying to understand the facts.
The narrative evolves.
Yes, it does.
It becomes so disconnected from the reality of what actually happened. And when I saw it,
Yeah.
I saw a dude with his knee on the guy. I don't know if I remember if it was on his neck. I don't remember exactly. But the cop had his knee on the guy's neck forever. And he was like saying, like, let me go. I can't breathe, whatever. And then eventually the guy stopped moving, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He arrested there at that moment. And
was he dead on the ground? Did he die right there next to the car on the ground, or did he die later?
They rolled him into the emergency room, and if I remember correctly, I think he still had like agonal respirations. It's like, kind of like this, and they called it. They called it there in the ER, but I think for all intents and purposes, he was probably gone at that moment in time. There in that that gutter, adjacent to the sidewalk,
right next to the tire of the car.
Yeah, right there, and. There, and you never know about restraint deaths because they happen. They used to happen a lot more frequently. I don't. You would get, we kind of evolved, and I'm saying this from the medical legal perspective. I'm not saying this from a police practitioner perspective. I'm talking about what we observe, because we have to handle these cases in our field and be as objective as we possibly can.
Right.
Form and function. What were the mechanics involved in all of this? How did it actually go down? And then that's what I'm talking about, trying to remain neutral in this world and present the findings as to what the mechanism of death actually was. Well, were there any other contributing factors?
Right.
Drugs, that sort of thing.
Well, there's two camps. It's binary with George Floyd. It's either the camp where he only died because he was high on drugs, on fentanyl, and there's another camp that says no, the cop basically strangled him to death, and he died because the cop had his knee on his neck.
Yes. Yeah.
But there's also like some people are saying maybe it was a combination of the both.
I think that it probably was. Here's the question, and you can't get past this. If Floyd had those substances on board, would he otherwise have died while he was walking down the street?
Right.
Were they at lethal levels at that point in time? And if remembering back,
was it just a perfect coincidence that was the one time he was about to overdose, was when the cop put his knee on his neck?
Yeah, and then because here's the thing: if you've got these drugs on board, they're going to compromise your ability to uptake oxygen anyway. And so you get this individual in this asymmetrical position where they're flat on the ground. You've got, just the chest being able to rise and fall is going to compromise their ability to process oxygen. You've already got a system that's being affected by a substance that's bounding through your system already.
Right.
It's a perfect storm, and it was very unfortunate that it happened. I don't know, and it's not really my place to know whether or not they got it right or not. I know that had those two individuals not met at that point in time, it'd probably be a different story.
Totally. What are your thoughts on the death penalty? My
thoughts?
Yeah.
Do
you think about it much?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I actually do episodes on my show about death penalty but here's kind of the thing. When it's announced that someone is facing, whatever it is, nitrogen deprivation, which they're using now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they used it in Alabama recently, a couple of times.
Nitrogen deprivation.
Mm-hmm.
They put them in a room and suck.
It looks like a firefighter's mask they put on their face.
Wow.
Yeah, and
is that
because they
more
never
humane?
can get the damn formula right for lethal injection, or people are always protesting about it. It's not a very pleasant way to die. And I know there's people who say, well, it shouldn't be pleasant. They did, and you return, and then you've got these people that are using firing squad now, and I think South Carolina, I think they tried it, and the guy eventually died. There were some of the shooters that missed the mark. I don't know how you can miss it,
right?
Because there's a patch.
You're
over
pretty
your
close
chest.
up.
Yeah. Here's the thing about the death penalty, and I've actually assisted in three autopsies on people that were executed. So one was an electrocution and two were lethal injection.
Why would you do an autopsy on somebody?
Because they're in state custody when they die. Let me ask you this. How do you classify the death? Is it an accident?
That's a good question. No, it's not an accident.
Is it suicide?
It's a murder.
It's homicide.
It's
a homicide. It's done at the hand of the state. And
it's a legal homicide.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of the term murder. Murder is a lawyer's word. It's very dramatic. So homicide is very clinical, and that's one of the 5 manners of death. And so they're in state custody. As a matter of fact, autopsies on any prisoner, but particularly when it comes to executed individuals, are more detailed than anything you can possibly imagine. I'm talking about the soles of the feet are dissected.
What?
Palms of the hands, up and down the arms. The back is completely dissected out. Yeah, everything stem to stern. Because what their goal is, you want to be able to prove this person wasn't tortured in any way prior to the state killing them. It's an interesting thing. So anyway,
who makes the call? Who dictates that autopsies for these people who have been executed by the state? Mm-hmm. Who made the law or the rule that you have to do such an extensive deep dive on the autopsy?
I don't know that most states say that they have to be autopsied. The extent of the autopsy, I think, traditionally has been dictated by the forensic pathology community. Okay. Because they know where problems will arise. It's like if you have someone that dies in the back of a cruiser, all right, and they're in custody, all right, there will be so much more detail given to that autopsy than any other kind of case. And the same kind of dissection will generally be done on those individuals that die in police custody. Even if you have someone that dies in custody of, an apparent cardiac event, they're still going to be autopsied because, you can't go back and wish that it had been done. All right. It has to be done. If you don't do it at that moment in time, one, they're either going to be buried and vaulted down in the ground, so you're going to have them exhumed if it comes, or they're going to be cremated. And there won't be anything left at that point in time. So they're going to do it.
So if somebody dies in the state's custody or in the government's custody, You have to be absolutely sure there was no
Absolutely.
foul play.
Yeah.
There was no.
Yeah, you don't want there to be any question whatsoever. That's why, like, so many offices will do things like partial autopsies, where they might only open the head or they might only open the chest. I'm not a proponent of that. I've always felt like in for a penny, in for a pound. You got 1 foot in a boat and 1 foot in the water. Make up your mind. Either do the autopsy or don't do the autopsy with an external exam. And they'll rationalize it in a variety of ways. But if you're going to go ahead and put the cold steel to a body, you need to do it as thoroughly as you can, because we've seen cases where people have been bitten by that. I covered, the Daybell cases up in Idaho, which you had 2 kids that were murdered. One of the kids was, there I go, use the word murdered, brutally murdered. I'll put it to you that way. One of the kids was cocooned and buried on a piece of farmland. And
Cocooned?
Cocooned, like wrapped. They're wrapped in plastic.
The body was.
Yeah, and we view that as there's a certain way we view how perpetrators treat bodies after death. Like cocooning of a body, burying a body, that's memorialization of a body. That means that you have kind of a tie. Even the most brutal murder, they're trying to, in their own way, first off, they might be trying to hide the body, obviously, but they're honoring the body. Whereas this kid's sister was within 50 yards, and they used a pickaxe to break her body apart as she's been thrown onto a fire and try to render her down.
Oof.
Well, the same guy that did this is now on death row in Idaho for killing his wife as well. And they went out to the scene when she died. She had a frothy cone. She had a frothy cone that was coming out of her mouth, which means she was in some kind of congestive failure. You see it a lot with drug ingestion. And they were like, yeah, we're not going to do an autopsy. Well, it turns out that was homicide.
Wow.
And they transported her from Idaho to Utah, where she was buried there, and you had to get the Utah State Medical Examiner involved in this thing. And her grave was also compromised. So there had been some water intrusion and that sort of thing. And she had already been embalmed. So my point of my rambling here is the fact that you need to go ahead and do it. If you're going to do it, do it. You don't want to dilly-dally around with this, because that's the thing, death is final in many ways. It's final because it ends somebody's life, but it's also final in the sense from an investigative perspective that if you do not strike while the iron is hot, you're going to find yourself wedged into a horrible position down the road if somebody comes forward and says, yeah, well, they may have died at somebody else's hand, or they may have died in a manner in which is not consistent with the story we were initially given.
The crazy thing is so many people get exonerated off death row from new evidence.
I know. And
DNA evidence.
Yeah. And again,
that's the only thing that I would say.
With the technology that we have now, I am not as inclined as I once was towards it, because there have been screw-ups in the past where we know for a fact that people have been executed that were not responsible. Right. And you can dismiss that if you want to. I don't mean you, I mean like universally. Mm-hmm. You can dismiss that if you want to. However, you can't reclaim that life. You can't bring it back. And I've actually heard people make the argument. They'll say, well, I'm sure they were guilty of something. Really? That rose to the death penalty, that you're going to kill them. So I think that it is warranted. It is warranted, but it has to be very specific, and buddy, it better be very, very thorough, the investigation.
Do you think it helps families of victims when the guy who committed the crime gets executed?
I have never,
do you think it psychologically closes any doors?
They'll say, well, we can close that chapter, but they're always left wanting. And here's the other thing. If you try to make the argument for deterrence, that argument is facile. It doesn't exist. You can't. There's no deterrent, that you can connect. Oh, gee whiz, that guy got executed. He's been on
I
death
better
row
not do this. I could
for
get killed.
25 years later. So how does it act as a deterrent? I always cite, I was just having this discussion the other day with somebody. There's this, I urge anybody to look this image up because it's a classic image. It's from the Old West. Everybody's dressed in black, they're black broadcloth, jackets and all that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And it's a huge crowd that's in the center of this town, and there's a gallows there. And you can see fathers in the image. I guess they're fathers. They're grown men, and they have the kids up on their shoulders. And they're facing the gallows. You don't see the accused I don't think you see the accused on the gallows. But people would bring their kids to these things. And in our mind, it's like, clutch pearls, that's horrible. Right. But I don't know it for a fact. I can actually probably say that the dad was saying, boy, let me tell you something. If you do this, cause and effect, this is where you're going to wind up.
Right.
Or just the average citizenry, and yeah, I guess it's a blood sport. People want the gore of it, kind of like, the terror in France where everybody show up for the guillotining of everyone. Right. It wasn't necessarily, well, I guess you could drive people with fear that, this can happen to you. But to my way of thinking, none of these executions have ever, in modern times have never been done so that the public can see it. And right. Again, it's like anything else with death. Most people don't realize the reality of death until it happens in their little space.
Yeah.
They don't think it's going to visit them. That's kind of where my field varies from like policing. There's no getting kitty cats out of the trees. There's no reuniting a lost child with a parent. None of that stuff exists in our world. It's death day in and day out. And if it's not about the body, it's trying to find out who they are and getting the families notified, which is one of the worst aspects in my world because I did, roughly 2,000 in-person death notifications as well.
Oh my God.
And so that weighs really heavy on you because the first one I ever did, I still remember it to this day, and the last one was just as bad as the first one.
That almost has to be worse than dealing with the dead bodies.
It is because, at that point they're inanimate. You're
changing their lives forever.
Yeah, you are. I've equated it to pulling a pin on a grenade.
Yeah.
And throwing it into the room, shutting the door behind you.
Yeah.
And you hear the yells and the screams and that sort of thing. And, there's an old saying in the South where people say it's all over but the shouting. Well, the shouting never ends. And even for these families years later, that screaming in their brains, it's always screaming. And I'll tell you a quick story, something that I've related before, but I had a young man that was just absolutely high off his ass. He had been smoking weed, all morning long. He had a dirt bike. And in New Orleans, they have what's referred to, people outside of New Orleans don't really understand this, but they have the center of the road, which most people call the median. They call it the neutral ground. And there's long history behind that term. People can look it up. But he was on his dirt bike on this 4-lane road that is separated by a canal. Eastbound lanes are separated from the westbound lanes by a canal, and there's a power line that runs, following the canal. And he's just racing up and down.
So in Louisiana?
Yeah, this is in the New Orleans metro area. And this kid was on this bike. He's in his early 20s, and he hits a guide wire that comes down to hold these power lines in place. Ugh. And it diagonally decapitates him. And there were a group of kids standing there, and they watched this whole thing. We interviewed them, and they gave a great description, but they talked about the bike tumbled, his body tumbled, and then his head kind of rolled behind it. And that's literally the position, that I found him in when I got there. Well, I went and examined his body, pulled out his wallet, found his driver's license, and, we collected all of his remains, took our photos and measurements and all this stuff. And I grabbed a deputy sheriff and I said, this isn't too far away. Let's roll over here and notify, see if anybody's at home. Rolled up, and it's kind of a typical, much like Florida, it's kind of a typical New Orleans home. There's a boat in the driveway on a trailer, and
It's very Florida.
a live oak tree in the front yard. Get out of my car, got the deputy with me. I go up to the door, pull out my badge, I badge him, knock on the door, badge him. This lady comes to the door, and I said, ma'am, I need to talk to you. Are you related to this kid? And she said, yes, that's my son. And immediately she's, she goes into what's wrong, what's happened, on and on. Her husband comes down and he immediately screams out, what are you doing here? Why are you asking about our son? I said, we need to sit down. I go in, I said, and this is kind of the way I notify. You can hem and haw around it.
So you go inside and sit down.
Oh,
with
yeah,
them.
yeah. And I sit down and I tell them, your son has been killed in an accident. And of course, she's screaming, carrying on, which is understandable. And you leave them with a card. That's what you do. Your business card, and it has, here, call this number. This is where his remains will be. You need to make funeral arrangements. We're going to take him back to the office. We're going to do an autopsy, do an examination. That went in that direction, and it was probably 6 months later. I was on duty. I got a call from police. We need you out at this address. And this address was on Airline Highway in New Orleans. And if anyone's familiar with Airline Highway, this is where all the no-tell motels are. It's where famously, Jimmy Swagger just gacked out a couple of weeks ago. That's where he got caught with the prostitutes. He'd come down to New Orleans. He'd pick up a prostitute. Really disgusting stuff. It's that same collection of these no-tell motels. And a guy had barricaded himself in a room, and he was apparently a deputy sheriff. And they'd called SWAT out. He popped himself in the head. He died, right? So I go out, and I'm looking over the scene, and this is one of these little slices of life, that you don't really get in any other context. His badge case is there, which commonly, if you're in law enforcement, you'll put your license in your badge case so you can get out of a ticket. You put, oh, yeah, well, yeah, my license is in here somewhere, and they see the badge. Yeah. Oh, well, who do you work for? Just go on. And he had a Beretta 9mm pistol. It was his service weapon. He was a reserve deputy in an adjacent parish, and this guy was just like super jacked. It turned out he had roid rage. He was always angry, aggressive, and all this sort of thing. Suffered also from depression, shot himself, pulled out his driver's license, and the address was familiar. And I grab a deputy, and off we go. Now, this is pre-Katrina, so New Orleans was in excess of 1 million people at this time, the greater New Orleans area, and pulled up at the house, boats in the driveway, live oak trees in the front yard. And this was probably about 11 o'clock at night.
Was the dad?
Mom and dad were both there. And I knocked on the door, and this is not the greatest face in the world, but you would think that she had seen a demon rise from hell. The scream that went out, and I put my badge up, and I said, I need to talk to you. That's the kind of thing that happens when you notify families. You never know where it's coming from.
So who was the cop?
He was the brother of the guy that got his head cut off.
Older brother or something?
Yeah. Yeah.
Both sons.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. So you work in this world where you never really know where anything's going to come at any point in time. You know, it's you know, where it kind of intersects reality, intersects with these kind of, I don't know, it's almost like a weird spiritual kind of thing, you know, because you kind of have to rise above it and understand that the thing that I had to do and didn't do it very well was that I had to convince myself that this is not my grief. This is not my kinfolks. And you can only do that for so long. It takes toll. Death always takes toll. Death, when I wrote that book many years ago, I
Blood Beneath My Feet, is that what it's called?
I anthropomorphized death. And I talked about how death was actually a figure in my life that rode along with me. And it got so bad, particularly toward the end of my career, where it would, you know, death would be there whispering in my ear, you see this, boy, I can do this to you anytime I want. And I bear witness to death day in and day out. And listen, I'm not alone. There, right now, as we speak, Nanny, there are people that are out there that are doing this job. They've been doing it for years, and they're going out on some of the most horrible things that you can imagine: decomposed bodies, abused kids that have died, some grandma that has died in the house where the kids didn't give two hoots in hell about her, and she's found decomposing in her bed because no one's visited her, you know. And so they're bearing witness to all of this horror day in and day out, and they're trying to, you know, they're trying to cope with it, but it's really hard if you don't have somebody to talk to about it.